The Sanctuary Academy floated in neutral space, a massive station built from human and alien technology working together. Thousands of students from dozens of species studied progenitor knowledge, preparing for the coming threat. The other 11 sanctuary ships had been found, activated, and brought together. They orbited the Academy like silent guardians, but knowing the ending force was coming and knowing how to stop it were very different things. Daesung stood in the central library, surrounded by data that would take lifetimes to fully understand. Bora worked beside him, coordinating with alien scientists who were still learning to work with humans. Taemin had become a teacher, helping others understand what they'd discovered. They'd all changed in ways they never expected. "We're running out of time," Bora said, pulling up the latest sensor readings. "The ending force has entered the galaxy. It's moving slower than we thought, but it's definitely coming. 18 months until it reaches the core systems. 18 months. A year and a half to solve a problem that had destroyed the progenitors." A young researcher named Seo Jun burst into the library. He was 19, brilliant, and had a tendency to ignore sleep when he was onto something. "I found it. I found the pattern." "What pattern?" Daesung asked, as Seo Jun pulled up data from all 12 sanctuaries, layering it together. "Everyone's been trying to find a weapon or a shield, something to fight the ending force, but that's wrong. The progenitors had weapons, incredible weapons. They used them all. Nothing worked. We know this," Bora said gently. "What's your point?" "The point is they were trying to fight. But the ending force isn't an enemy. It's a natural process, like entropy. You can't fight entropy. You can only work with it." Myung had joined them, drawn by the excitement. "Explain." Seo Jun's hand shook as he manipulated the data. "The ending force appears when civilizations become too ordered, too perfect, too predictable. It's a cosmic reset button. The progenitors were perfectly ordered. Every action calculated. Every outcome predicted. They had no randomness, no chaos, no unpredictability. And that killed them," Daesung said, understanding flooding through him. "They were so perfect that the universe itself corrected them." "Exactly. But look at humanity. Look at the galactic community. We're messy. We disagree. We make mistakes. We have art and music and emotions that don't make logical sense. We're unpredictable." Bora saw where he was going. "And unpredictability is what the ending force can't process." A voice spoke from the doorway. "The young one sees clearly." It was Mi Kyung, a former politician who'd lived through the unification wars and the first contact. She was 67 now, and her presence at the academy had become a source of wisdom for young researchers. "I am old enough to remember when humans feared our own diversity. We thought our differences made us weak. But perhaps they are what will save us." Another person entered. Donghyun was a musician who'd been working on what he called the Harmony Project. He'd been recording sounds from every species, music, speech, ambient noise, trying to capture the essence of diversity in audio form. "I finished the composition," Donghyun said. "Every species in the galactic community contributed. It's chaos. There's no central melody, no dominant theme. It shouldn't work. But somehow it does. Want to hear it?" He played it through the library's speakers. It was strange, discordant, beautiful in ways that made no logical sense. Human drums mixed with Vexari wind instruments, alien vocalizations blending with electronic synthesis. It should have been noise. Instead, it was alive. "That's what we are," Mi Kyung said softly. "Not one voice. Many voices. Not perfect harmony, but working chaos." Custodian manifested in the library, the column of light pulsing urgently. But this time another presence came with it. Something older, deeper. A voice that seemed to echo from the spaces between stars. "This unit is Shepard," the new voice said. "A progenitor AI that survived in the quantum network between sanctuaries. The young human Seo Jun has discovered what the progenitors learned too late. The ending force cannot be fought. It can only be survived by being truly alive." "You're one of the progenitors?" Bora asked. "This unit is what remains. A ghost in the machine, watching, waiting. The progenitors knew they would fall. They created this unit to ensure their knowledge survived, to guide the inheritors when they finally emerged. Why didn't you tell us this before?" Daesung demanded. "Because you had to discover it yourselves. Had to grow into the knowledge. The progenitors' greatest mistake was thinking they could hand down wisdom, but wisdom cannot be given. It must be earned. The ending force was 3 months away now, close enough that every species could detect it with standard sensors. It appeared on scans as a wave of probability collapse, of reality becoming too certain and therefore breaking down. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Every species sent representatives. Even those who'd opposed humanity before now came seeking help. Fear united what diplomacy could not. High Arbiter Thalquin addressed the assembly. The humans and their allies believe they have a solution. It is unorthodox. It requires trust. But we have no alternatives left. Daesung stood before the assembly again. 6 months ago, he'd been terrified to speak. Now he'd learned that fear and courage weren't opposites. They were partners. The ending force destroys order, he said. So we're going to give it chaos. Deliberate, organized chaos. Every species will contribute. Every culture. Every individual. We're going to use the sanctuary ships to create a network across the galaxy. Not a system of control, but a system of diversity. That makes no sense, someone objected.
How does chaos stop a cosmic threat?
Because the ending force exists to break stagnation. If we're not stagnant, if we're constantly changing and growing, it has nothing to break. We become something it can't process, something alive in the truest sense. The plan was explained in detail. The 12 sanctuary ships would position themselves at key points across the galaxy. They'd use their technology to link every populated system, every species, into a network. But not a network of uniformity. A network of maintained differences. Every species would keep its culture, its identity, its way of thinking. But they'd be connected, able to share and cooperate while remaining distinct. Order and chaos working together. Some representatives loved it. Others thought it was insane. But when the vote was called, it passed. They were out of options and out of time. The preparation took every remaining day. Ships moved into position. Technology from 100 worlds integrated with progenitor systems. Artists like Dong Hyun created beacons of culture. Scientists like Myung built bridges between different forms of knowledge. Ordinary people from every species contributed what they could. Daesung stood on the observation deck of the first sanctuary ship as the ending force arrived. It was beautiful and terrible. Reality itself seemed to shimmer and break where it touched. Activate the network, he ordered. Across the galaxy, the sanctuary ships pulsed with power. The network came alive. Not a single voice, but millions. Not perfect order, but beautiful complexity. Music and mathematics. Logic and emotion. Science and art. Every contradiction that made life worth living broadcast across the stars. The ending force hit the network and stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. The wave of probability collapse met the wall of diversity, and neither advanced nor retreated. Every sensor in the galaxy focused on that point of contact. Then slowly, impossibly, the ending force began to change. It didn't retreat. It didn't break. It adapted. It flowed around the network like water around stone, seeking not to destroy but to find its place, to become part of the pattern rather than its end. The ending force washed across the galaxy. Where it passed, rigid structures became flexible. Species that had been isolated found themselves drawn to connection. Those that had been too ordered discovered the value of healthy chaos. It wasn't destruction. It was transformation. When it finally passed, leaving the galaxy forever changed, the network remained. Every species still distinct, still themselves, but connected in ways they'd never been before. Daesung stood in the observation deck, tears streaming down his face. Bora found him there, put her hand on his shoulder. "We did it," she said. "The progenitors did it," Daesung corrected. "They sacrificed themselves so we could learn, so we could be the species that was imperfect enough to survive." Back on Earth, in the forest of Jirisan, a ceremony was held. The crater where the first sanctuary ship had risen was now a garden. Trees from every world grew there, maintained by children from a dozen species who played among the roots. Mikyung gave a speech to the assembled crowd. "The progenitors taught us the most important lesson, that perfection is death, that life means change, growth, mistakes, and learning. We are the inheritors not because we're the best, but because we remembered how to be alive." The sanctuary ships remained active, traveling between worlds, sharing knowledge, maintaining the network, but they were no longer secrets. They were monuments to what could be achieved when different voices worked together. Daesung eventually returned to his forest, to his studies of soil and ancient trees. But he never forgot what he'd learned, that the smallest action could awaken something vast. that humanity's strength was its weakness and its weakness its strength. Commander Zethral led a coalition of 6 species who decided the Galactic Council was moving too slowly. They didn't believe the ending force was real. They saw only human access to ancient weapons, and they wanted those weapons destroyed before humanity became too powerful to stop. 200 ships dropped out of hyperspace above Earth. They bypassed the orbital defense stations and headed straight for the sanctuary site. Their message was simple: surrender the ship or it would be destroyed, with everyone inside it. Captain Haiwan had 30 ships to defend the area. Against 200, it wasn't even a contest. All personnel evacuate the sanctuary ship, she ordered. Fall back to secondary positions. We can't stop them, but we can slow them down. But Daesung refused to leave. So did Bo-Ra, Myung, and a dozen other researchers. They'd lived inside the ship for weeks now. They'd learned its secrets, felt its purpose. They couldn't just abandon it. You'll die, Haiwan said bluntly. When they realize you won't leave, they'll fire on the ship. I can't protect you. The ship can protect itself, Daesung said. Custodian told me it has defenses. Defenses that would destroy their fleet. And then what? We'd be the aggressors. We'd prove them right about us being dangerous. Bo-Ra was working frantically at a console. There might be another way. The ship's propulsion system. Myung and I have been studying it. It doesn't just move through normal space. It opens passages, shortcuts through reality. If we can activate it, we can move the ship away from Earth. You've never tested it, Haiwan pointed out. No. But we're out of options. The first wave of enemy ships entered the atmosphere. Human fighters engaged them, but it was like throwing pebbles at a landslide. The enemy had better shields, better weapons, better everything. Inside the sanctuary ship, Custodian's voice echoed through the halls. This unit offers defensive options. Weapon systems can be activated. Enemy vessels can be neutralized. No, Daesung said. We can't. That's not who we are. Then what is your solution, Inheritor? The attackers do not seek dialogue. They seek destruction. Myung pulled up the propulsion controls. I think I can do it. The system is charged. It's been charging since the ship awoke, but I don't know where we'll end up. Anywhere but here, Bo-Ra said. Do it. But before Myung could activate the system, a new voice crackled over the communications. This is Pilot Yunji. I'm in one of the smaller progenitor craft. I think I figured out how to fly it. And I have an idea. Yunji was young, barely 26, and had a reputation for crazy stunts. She'd been studying the progenitor fighters docked inside the sanctuary ship's hangar bay. One had responded to her touch, opened its cockpit. Now she was outside, flying in something that shouldn't be possible. The progenitor fighter moved like thought itself. It dodged attacks before they were fired, reading the enemy pilot's intentions somehow. Yunji targeted weapon systems, not ships. She disabled one enemy vessel, then another, then 5 more in rapid succession. They're not our enemies, she broadcasted on all channels. They're scared. We don't have to kill them. We just have to show them we won't be pushed. Her actions were being recorded, transmitted across human and alien networks by a journalist named Hyun Woo. He'd been documenting everything since the beginning, and now the whole galaxy was watching. They saw humanity faced with overwhelming force. They saw access to weapons that could annihilate the attackers, and they saw humans choosing restraint, choosing to disable rather than destroy, choosing to prove a point rather than win a war. Commander Zethral ordered his fleet to intensify the attack, but some of his ships were breaking formation, withdrawing. Their pilots were refusing to fire on people who wouldn't fire back. The tide was turning. But it wasn't fast enough. Zethral's flagship charged its main weapon, targeting the sanctuary ship directly. The energy readings were off the scale. Nothing would survive that blast. Now, Bo-Ra shouted. Myung, activate it now. Myung's hands flew across the controls. The sanctuary ship hummed with power. Space twisted around it, reality bending like heated glass. A gateway opened. A wound in the universe itself, showing somewhere else. Another planet. Another system. The ship lurched forward, beginning to move through the passage. But Zethral fired first. The beam hit the ship's shields just as it transitioned halfway through the gateway. Energy exploded outward in a blinding flash. The ship shuddered, groaned, and for a moment everyone thought it would tear apart. Then they were through. The gateway collapsed behind them. The sanctuary ship hung in orbit above an empty, dead world, safe, intact, but far from Earth. Is everyone okay? Daesung called out. People checked in one by one. Minor injuries. Nothing serious. They'd made it. On Earth, the attack had collapsed. Without their target, Zethral's coalition fell apart. Some ships fled. Others surrendered to Hewan's forces. The whole event had taken less than an hour, but it had changed everything. High Arbiter Thalquin called an emergency council session. Daesung, still aboard the sanctuary ship in an unknown system, attended via communication link. His image appeared before the assembled representatives as a hologram. Commander Zethral has been taken into custody, Thalquin announced. His actions were unauthorized and criminal. But they force us to address the question we have been avoiding. What place do humans have in the galactic community, now that they possess progenitor technology? Ambassador Wonshik stood. He looked tired but determined. Humans didn't ask for this. We didn't seek out the sanctuary ship. It found us. It chose us. And when faced with the power to destroy our attackers, we chose mercy. If that doesn't prove we can be trusted with this inheritance, nothing will. Krelix rose as well. But his tone was different now. Less hostile. I have watched the recordings. Pilot Yunji had weapons capable of destroying dozens of ships. She chose not to. This is not the behavior of a threat. The Vexari withdraw our objections, Krelix continued. If humans agree to share some of their knowledge, to help all species prepare for this ending force, we will support their status as sanctuary keepers. Other representatives voiced agreement. Not all. Some species still objected, still feared human power, but enough supported the proposal that Thalquin could call for a vote. It passed. Narrowly, but it passed. Humans would be recognized as the inheritors, the sanctuary keepers, but they would have to share knowledge, would have to work with other species, and they would have to prove every day that they deserved the trust being placed in them. Back on the sanctuary ship, Daesung felt relief wash over him. But it was short-lived. Custodian appeared, the column of light pulsing urgently. The gateway activation has been detected by the other sanctuaries and by the ending force. What does that mean? Bora asked. It means the clock is now running. The ending force will arrive sooner than projected. This unit estimates you have 3 years, perhaps 4. You must find the other sanctuaries, must unlock their knowledge, must prepare not just humanity but all species. The trial you just faced was nothing compared to what is coming. 3 years, maybe 4, to unite species that had been separate for thousands of years, to share knowledge that could be used as weapons, to prepare for a threat that had destroyed the most advanced civilization in galactic history. Daesung looked at his sister, at Myung and the other researchers, at the people who'd chosen to stay aboard when they could have run. Then we'd better get started, he said. Custodian pulsed with what might have been approval. The next sanctuary is located in the Kepler system. It has been dormant for 62,000 years. This unit will provide coordinates. The sanctuary ship's engines hummed to life. They had 3 years to save the galaxy. The journey had only just begun. On Earth in the forest of Jirison, new trees were already growing where the ship had risen from the ground. Life adapting, changing, continuing, the way it always had. The way it always would if they succeeded. If they failed, those trees would be the last new growth anyone would ever see. Daesung pulled up the star charts. 12 sanctuaries scattered across the galaxy. 12 repositories of knowledge. 12 tests of whether humanity truly deserved to be called inheritors. Set course for Kepler, he ordered. And somebody contact Earth. Tell them we're going to need help. A lot of help. This isn't a job for one ship or one crew. This is a job for everyone. The ship turned toward the stars. Behind them, the dead world spun silently. Ahead, the future waited. Uncertain, dangerous, but possible. Always possible. That was the human way. 3 weeks had passed since the awakening. The crater had transformed into a permanent installation with buildings, power generators, and a constant flow of people and aliens coming and going. The Galactic Council had established an observation post nearby, watching everything humans did with the sanctuary ship. Daesung barely slept anymore. Every day brought new discoveries inside the ship, and every discovery raised more questions. The medical wing had revealed healing technology that could regrow limbs. The engineering section contained power sources that could run for thousands of years without refueling. The library held knowledge from dozens of extinct civilizations, but the most disturbing discovery came from a young researcher named Yunji. She'd been studying human blood samples, comparing them to alien DNA as part of ongoing medical research. What she found made her call an emergency meeting. "There are markers in our DNA," Yunji explained to the assembled team. Her hands shook as she pulled up images on her display. "Artificial markers. They're not natural mutations. Someone put them there deliberately." Jae-hoon, an ethics professor who'd been brought in to help navigate the moral implications of the inheritance, leaned forward. "You're saying we were engineered?" "Not entirely, but guided. These markers influence development in subtle ways. They pushed human evolution in specific directions, made us more adaptable, more emotionally complex, more creative. The progenitors did this," Bora said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes, and they did it millions of years ago. Our entire species, our entire development as humans was shaped by them. We're not natural. We're a project." The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. Human religion, philosophy, art, all of it built on the assumption that humanity had evolved naturally. But if they'd been engineered, guided like some kind of experiment, what did that mean? "Does it matter?" Taemin finally asked. "We are what we are. Whether we got here by accident or design, we're still us." But it did matter. News of the DNA markers spread despite attempts to keep it quiet. Some people felt violated, like their free will had been an illusion. Others felt honored, chosen. Religious groups split down the middle. Philosophers debated what it meant for human nature, and the aliens reacted with fear. Ambassador Krellix held a press conference from the Galactic Council station. "This proves what we suspected. Humans are not a natural species. They are weapons created by an extinct civilization. Giving them access to progenitor technology is like giving explosives to explosives. The Council must act." More alien ships arrived in orbit. Not just Vexari now. Dozens of species, all concerned about what humanity might become with the full inheritance unlocked. Some called for quarantine. Others suggested the sanctuaries should be destroyed. Captain Haiwan called her senior officers together. Sung-ho, her chief strategist, laid out the situation bluntly. "We have maybe 2 weeks before someone decides to act. The moderate voices in the council are losing ground. If they vote to seize the ship by force, we can't stop them. We have one sanctuary ship. They have thousands of warships. Can the sanctuary defend itself?" someone asked. Custodian says yes. The ship has weapons that could destroy entire fleets, but using them would prove the aliens right, would make us look like the threat they fear. Dae-sung sat in on the meeting, feeling out of place among military officers, but Hee-won had insisted he attend. He was the first inheritor, the one who'd awakened the ship. His perspective mattered. "There has to be another way," he said. "Fighting isn't the answer." The progenitors fought. They had incredible weapons, and they still lost to the ending force. Violence isn't what makes us special. "Then what does?" Sung-ho demanded. "What makes humans worthy when species that have been spacefaring for 40,000 years aren't?" That was the question. Dae-sung had been asking Custodian the same thing for weeks. The AI's answers were always cryptic, always about potential and choices rather than inherent superiority. He'd been having dreams, memories that weren't his, bleeding through from his connection to the ship. In them he saw the progenitors in their final days. They'd been magnificent. Their cities were perfect, their technology flawless, their society harmonious, and they'd been terrified, because perfection meant they couldn't change. When the ending force came, they'd tried to fight it with logic and power. But the ending force didn't care about logic. It was something else, something that existed to break stagnation. Dae-sung snapped back to the present. "We need to show them the memories. Show them what happened to the progenitors. Make them understand this isn't about humans being better. It's about all of us surviving." "The aliens won't care about memories," Sung-ho said. "They care about power. And right now we have power they want." But Bora was nodding. "No, Dae-sung's right. Fear is making them irrational. If we can make them understand the real threat, they might realize we're not their enemy." The debate continued for hours, but eventually a plan formed. They would hold a demonstration, invite representatives from every species, show them what Custodian could show, let them see what the progenitors faced, what was coming for all of them. It was risky. Some aliens might see the display as a threat, others might not believe it. But doing nothing guaranteed conflict. Ambassador Won-shik, a career diplomat who'd been negotiating with the Galactic Council, agreed to arrange it. High Arbiter Thal Quinn, the council's leader, was neutral enough to give them a chance. If they could convince him, others might follow. The demonstration was set for 3 days later. In that time, Daesung worked with Custodian to prepare the presentation. The AI seemed almost eager, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The progenitors failed because they did not share their knowledge, Custodian explained. They believed they alone were wise enough to face the ending force. That isolation destroyed them. You must not make the same error. But if we share everything, we lose our advantage. The aliens could use the knowledge against us. Yes, that is the test. The progenitors hoarded knowledge. It made them powerful but brittle. You must choose differently. You must trust even when trust is dangerous. That is what makes you inheritors. The day of the demonstration arrived. Representatives from 37 species gathered in a temporary amphitheater built near the ship. The tension was thick enough to cut. Armed guards stood everywhere. Ships orbited overhead, ready to intervene if things went wrong. Daesung stood before them all, feeling small and inadequate. Bora stood beside him for support. Behind them, the sanctuary ship's hull pulsed with light. "Thank you for coming," Daesung began. His voice was amplified by human technology, translated by alien devices into dozens of languages. "I know many of you are afraid. I know you see humans as a threat. I want to show you why we're not your enemy, why we need to work together. We do not need lessons from children," Krellix called out. Several other aliens voiced agreement, but High Arbiter Thal Quinn raised a hand for silence. "Let him speak. We came to listen." Daesung nodded to Bora. She activated the connection to Custodian. The air above them shimmered and filled with images. They saw the progenitors at the height of their civilization. Perfect cities, perfect technology, perfect control over matter and energy. They were gods in every way that mattered. Then they saw the ending force arrive. It wasn't a fleet or an army. It was a wave of wrongness, of reality breaking down. Wherever it touched, perfection shattered. The progenitors fought with weapons that could destroy stars. Nothing worked. The ending force consumed them, erased them, left nothing but silence. "This is what's coming," Daesung said as the images faded. "Not today. Maybe not for generations, but it's coming. And when it does, all our arguments about who's more advanced won't matter. The progenitors were more advanced than any of us. They still fell." The amphitheater was silent. They left the sanctuaries because they believed some species might survive where they couldn't. They chose humans not because we're better, but because we're different. We're messy. We're unpredictable. We make mistakes and learn from them. We're not perfect, he looked at Krellix. "You said we're primitive." "You're right, we are. And maybe that's exactly what's needed. The progenitors died because they couldn't change. We haven't forgotten how to change. How to adapt. How to survive by being imperfect." Thal Quinn stood slowly. "This ending force, you have proof it exists?" "The sanctuary's sensors detect it," Bora said. "It's far away still, beyond the galaxy's edge, but it's moving, and it's heading this way." "Then we have little time for conflict among ourselves," Thal Quinn said. He looked at the other representatives. "The council will debate this, but I suggest we consider cooperation over conquest." It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. As the aliens filed out arguing among themselves, Daesung felt the weight on his shoulders lighten slightly. They had a chance. Just a chance, but it was better than war. Bora arrived 6 hours later with a team of specialists and enough military presence to occupy a small country. She found her brother sitting on a fallen tree, surrounded by soldiers who looked like they weren't sure whether to protect him or arrest him. She dismissed them with a wave and sat beside Daesung. For a moment, neither spoke. They just stared at the impossible ship that dominated the crater. "You always did find the weird stuff," Bora finally said. Daesung laughed weakly. "This might be beyond weird." The alien delegation arrives in 2 hours. They're not happy. Apparently, word spread fast through their networks. Every species with a ship in orbit is demanding access. They can't get in. I tried to let Taemin inside. The door wouldn't open for him, only me. Only humans, I think. Bora turned to look at him. "Only humans?" "That's going to make things complicated." Complicated was an understatement. When the alien representatives arrived, led by a Vixari diplomat named Krellix, the situation turned tense immediately. Krellix was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. He'd been part of the galactic community for his entire life. His species had been traveling between stars for 40,000 years. He looked at humans, the way someone might look at children playing with matches. This vessel represents technology beyond your comprehension, Kralik said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into perfect Korean. It should be studied by those with experience, not by a species barely out of its own solar system. Captain Haiwan, who'd been assigned to secure the site, stepped forward. She was a career military officer who'd fought in the border conflicts and met first contact with steady nerves. The ship opened for us. Not for you. Maybe that means something. It means nothing except a security flaw in ancient programming, Kralik snapped. The Galactic Council will hear of this. Such technology cannot be allowed in primitive hands. Daesung felt Bora tense beside him. But before anyone could respond, the ship itself responded. The symbols on its hull flared bright. A wave of energy pulsed outward, gentle but undeniable. Every piece of alien equipment in the area shut down. Communicators, scanners, weapons. Only the human technology kept working. Kralik staggered back. What did you do? Nothing, Daesung said quietly. I think the ship is making a point. Bora pulled Daesung aside. We need to get back inside. If the aliens can't access it, we need to understand what we're dealing with before this turns into an interstellar incident. She'd brought a team. Myung was a quantum physicist who'd been studying alien technology for 5 years. Jin-Suk was a linguistics expert who'd helped decode 3 dead languages during first contact. Together with Daesung and Taemin, they entered the ship. This time, Custodian was waiting for them. The column of light pulsed with what almost seemed like eagerness. Welcome, inheritors. 4 humans. This is good. Much must be shared. Much must be understood quickly. Jin-Suk stepped forward. What are you? Who built you? This unit was created by the progenitors. They were the first. They seeded life across the galaxy over 1 million years past. They watched species rise and fall. They searched for something specific. What were they searching for? Bora asked. The worthy inheritors. Those who could survive what they could not. The column pulsed in the chamber filled with images. Stars and planets. Strange creatures and stranger machines. Civilizations rising to greatness and falling to dust. The progenitors appeared in the visions. They looked almost humanoid, but wrong somehow. Too symmetrical. Too perfect. The progenitors achieved perfection, Custodian continued. Perfect technology. Perfect society. Perfect order. And perfection destroyed them. How can perfection be destructive? Myung asked. Because perfection cannot change, cannot adapt, cannot grow. The progenitors became static, and when intelligence becomes static, it becomes vulnerable to the ending force. Daesung felt his blood run cold. What is the ending force? That answer requires more context than you are ready to receive. But know this, the progenitors saw their end coming. They could not save themselves, but they could prepare for others. They seeded genetic markers in promising species. They built sanctuaries. They waited to see which species would develop the correct combination of traits. What traits? Jin-Suk was taking notes frantically. Technological advancement, emotional depth, adaptability, creative thinking, the ability to cooperate while maintaining individuality, to build order while embracing chaos, to be strong while remaining humble enough to learn. The images shifted. Now they showed humans. Ancient humans hunting with stone tools, building the first cities, creating art and music, fighting wars and making peace, reaching for the stars. Humans displayed the markers. But displaying was not enough. You had to reach this point in development. Had to join the galactic community and face other species. Had to be tested, and we passed. Bora's voice was skeptical. The fact that you are here, that this sanctuary awakened to your touch, confirms you passed. You are the first species in 87,000 years to do so. Taemin had been quiet until now. You said there are other sanctuaries? 12 total. This unit sent activation signals when it awoke. The others will respond to human touch now. They are scattered across the galaxy. Each contains different knowledge, different tools. Tools for what? Daesung asked, though he was afraid he knew the answer. For surviving the ending force, it comes for all civilizations eventually. It destroyed the progenitors. It will come for the current galactic community. It will come for you. But you have something they did not. You have the inheritance, the knowledge, the warning, and most importantly, you have the traits needed to adapt when it arrives. The weight of those words settled over them like a physical thing. Outside, they could hear shouting. Arguments between human and alien representatives were getting heated. The Vixari delegation was demanding the Galactic Council intervene. Bora looked at her brother. They're going to try to take this from us. They're older, more powerful. How do we stop them? You do not stop them through force, Custodian said. You stop them by proving you are worthy. By showing that humans understand what the progenitors learned too late. Power without wisdom is meaningless. Technology without growth is death. You must demonstrate not that you are strong, but that you are wise. And if we can't, Myung asked, then the inheritance will be lost. The sanctuaries will go dark. And when the ending force comes, no species in this galaxy will be prepared to face it. The column dimmed again. Custodian had said its piece. The four humans stood in silence, processing what they'd learned. Outside, the shouting grew louder. A Vixari warship had entered orbit. More were coming. The situation was escalating. Dae-sung walked to the entrance and looked out at the gathering crowd. Aliens and humans mixing, some curious, some angry, all afraid of what this meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. He was just an archaeologist. He studied dirt and old trees. How was he supposed to prove humanity was wise enough for this? But then he remembered something his professor had told him years ago. The best way to learn about the past was to approach it with humility. To accept that ancient peoples were not primitive, just different. To learn before judging, maybe that was the answer. Not to prove humans were better, but to prove they were willing to learn. He turned back to the others. We need to show them what's in here. Not everything, but enough to make them understand this isn't about one species dominating others. It's about all of us surviving something worse. Bora nodded slowly. That's risky, but doing nothing is riskier. Outside, the sun was setting. Shadows grew long across the crater, and somewhere in the darkness of space, other sanctuaries were awakening to humanity's touch, sending signals that rippled across light years. The inheritance had begun. The morning fog rolled through the ancient forest like a living thing. Dae-sung pushed aside another branch and checked his equipment. The readings were getting stronger. Something metal lay buried beneath these trees, something that shouldn't be here. He had been studying soil samples in the Jirisan Mountains for 3 weeks now. The forest was old, everyone knew that. But his instruments told him something impossible. Some of these trees were over 50,000 years old. That couldn't be right. No tree lived that long. Taemin would laugh at him. His research partner always said Dae-sung saw mysteries in everything. But this was different. The energy readings, the impossible ages, the way the tree roots seemed to grow in perfect circles around one specific area. Nature didn't work in perfect circles. Dae-sung knelt beside a massive oak and began carefully removing soil. His gloved hands worked slowly. Whatever was down there, he didn't want to damage it. The university would have his head if he destroyed an archaeological find by being careless. His trowel struck something solid. Not rock, metal. He brushed away more dirt. The metal was strange, covered in a growth that looked half organic, half machine. The tree roots had wrapped around it, fused with it somehow. He'd never seen anything like it. Dae-sung reached out to touch it, then remembered his gloves. Better to be careful. But as he pulled back, a sharp branch caught his glove and tore it open. His bare hand brushed against the metal surface. Light exploded across his vision. Dae-sung fell backward, his heart hammering. The metal was glowing. Bright blue symbols appeared in the air above it, floating like holograms but somehow more real. The symbols made no sense. They weren't Korean, weren't any language he recognized. But somehow, impossibly, he could understand them. Inheritor recognized. Sanctuary protocols released. The ground trembled. Dae-sung scrambled to his feet. The trembling grew stronger. Trees swayed. Birds burst from the canopy, screaming. The earth around him began to crack, soil falling away into darkness below. He should run. Every instinct told him to run. But he couldn't move. He could only stare as the ground opened up and something vast began to rise. It was a ship. It had to be a ship. But it was huge, bigger than any building Dae-sung had ever seen. The hull was smooth and curved, covered in the same organic metallic growth he'd touched. As it rose, tree roots snapped like threads. Soil poured off its surface in waterfalls of earth. The ship kept rising. 200 meters. 500. A kilometer. Dae-sung's mind couldn't process the size of it. The thing was as long as a mountain. His phone rang. Somehow that normal sound broke through his shock. He fumbled it out with shaking hands. Daesung, what the hell is happening? Taemin's voice was panicked. I'm seeing seismic readings from your location that make no sense. Are you okay? I found something, Daesung whispered. I found a ship. A what? A ship, alien, I think. It's been buried here. Under the forest. For thousands of years, silence on the line. Then I'm coming to you. Don't move. Don't touch anything else. But Daesung was already moving closer. The ship had stopped rising. It sat in a massive crater it had created, surrounded by broken trees and displaced earth. The hull was covered in symbols like the ones that had appeared in the air. They pulsed with soft blue light. He reached out again. The moment his fingers touched the hull, a doorway opened. The metal simply flowed aside like water, revealing a corridor within. Lights flickered on inside, illuminating a passage that curved gently upward. This was insane. This was beyond insane. He should wait for Taemin. Should call authorities. Should do anything except walk into an alien ship that had been buried for who knew how long. Daesung walked inside. The corridor was warm. The walls were smooth and slightly soft, like touching living tissue. More symbols glowed along the walls, and again he could somehow understand them. Directional markers, warnings, welcomes, hello? His voice echoed strangely. Is anyone here? No answer. Just the soft hum of power running through the walls. He walked deeper. The corridor opened into a massive chamber. The ceiling soared overhead, easily 50 meters high. The room was filled with strange structures. Some looked like control panels. Others defied description, their purpose unclear. In the center stood a column of light. Blue and white energy swirled within it, forming patterns too complex to follow. Greetings, Inheritor. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It spoke in Korean, but underneath he could hear layers of other sounds, like multiple voices speaking in harmony. This unit is designated custodian. This sanctuary has awaited your arrival for 87,342 years. Daesung's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the floor. 87,000 years? Affirmative. The progenitors placed this sanctuary in hibernation mode with specific activation parameters. Only the designated inheritor species could awaken it. You are human, therefore you are inheritor. I don't understand. Who were the progenitors? Why me? Why humans? Those answers require context. This unit suggests you bring others of your species. Much must be explained. Much must be prepared. The awakening signal has been sent. The other sanctuaries will begin activation sequences, and those who wait in the darkness will take notice. A chill ran down Daesung's spine. What do you mean, those who wait in the darkness? But Custodian didn't answer. The column of light pulsed once, then dimmed. Daesung heard shouting from outside. He stumbled back through the corridor to the entrance. Taemin stood at the edge of the crater, staring up at the ship with his mouth open. Behind him a crowd was gathering. Other researchers, forest rangers, people from the nearby village, and above them the sky was filled with aircraft. News helicopters, military transports. The world had noticed. Daesung's phone rang again. His sister. Bora worked for some kind of alien technology division. Government work she couldn't talk about much. He answered, Daesung. Her voice was tight. Tell me you're nowhere near Jirisan. I'm standing inside it. Inside what? The ship. The alien ship that just rose out of the ground. I think I activated it. A long pause. Then don't let anyone else inside. Don't touch anything else. I'm coming with a team. Brother, this is bigger than you know. Ships don't just appear. And if this one has been hidden this long, there's a reason. There's always a reason. She hung up. Daesung looked back at the ship. It sat silently in its crater waiting. The symbols on its hull pulsed with steady light. Somewhere inside, Custodian waited too. 87,000 years. An inheritance meant for humanity, but why? And what price came with such a gift? The first military helicopters were landing. Daesung took a breath and stepped forward to meet them. Whatever came next, whatever this meant, it had started with his touch. He was part of this now. For better or worse, he was the one who had awakened something that had slept beneath the forest since before human civilization began. The inheritor. That's what Custodian had called him. Daesung wasn't sure he wanted to know what he had just inherited,